Hi, in this video I'm gonna show you guys a very important math skill. We call it the completing the square. Okay, completing the square. It is a very important skill, so please make sure you guys watch this. Even if you know it, even if you're very sure you know how to do it, I would still recommend you guys to finish this video. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to show you guys this technique, completing the square technique, by going over an example. So here I have a quadratic equation. It is just very typical, but I have this 5 over here, right? So by now we know that we should always try to sort of bring our good friend 0 there, right? So I'm gonna move the 5 over. I'll have x squared plus 14x. Now plus 49 minus 5, I'll have plus 44. If you think about this, so then the next step, typically we will try to factor it, right? And we'll see if there's a combination where we can get this 14x. So let's try to do that. So 44 can be broken down into 1 and 44. Which obviously we're not gonna use, and we're also not gonna use 44 and 1, right? Maybe 2 and 22. It is still too big, so don't even. And then I'm just 22 and 2. I'm not gonna think about that as well. What else? Maybe 4 and 11, or 11 and 4. But if I add them minus them, I don't get anything that's close to 14, right? 14. So there's really no other combinations that I can use, right? So which means I can't factor. I cannot factor this, right? Now then, if I can factor it, there are other ways. It's not the end of the day. There are other ways we can still solve this quadratic equation. Some of you guys might have heard the quadratic formula. You guys probably learned that back in Algebra 1, right? It's a very chunky formula, and all you have to do is you follow the formula, you can find it. But here, as this video is about completing the square, I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to delete all this chunk here. But I hope you guys understand the fact that we cannot factor this quadratic equation. Okay, so I'm going to solve this by completing the square. All right, let's do it. When we are trying to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, normally we would not get this 0. All right, so let me just start from the beginning. So this is what I had from the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my x squared there. I'm going to keep my 14x there, but I'm going to move this over. So I will have 5 minus 49. That will be negative 44. Okay. All right. So what do I do next? I will have to think about what do I add here, this box, so that I can make this into something squared. Okay. If this is a bit too fast for you, you can think about this. I'm trying to add a number there, right? So I can make this into x, and the number here and the number there will be exactly the same, right? So let's say if it's 3, then I'll have a 3 here. So I can write them as x plus 3, and I have x plus 3 squared, something like that. But it's not, of course, it's not a 3. I'm just writing the 3 down to show you guys as what we're expecting. Okay. Cool. Now this number I'm going to add, I'm adding that number to the left. So in order to keep my left and right balance, I also have to do the same thing to my right. Right. So how do I figure out what number that is? Now, it's actually a lot easier than it sounds. What you do is, regardless of the sign here, we don't care about the sign. Okay, don't care. We don't care about the sign here. We only care about the number, the coefficient of your x, which is 14. Take that 14, divided by 2, and that whole thing squared. And this is exactly what you're going to put there. So 14 over 2, that gives us 7 squared. So I put down 7 squared. Okay, so if I'm adding 7 squared to the left, I'll also be adding 7 squared on the right. 7 squared is 49, so I can, on the right hand side, let me change back to blue. On the right hand side, I'm gonna have negative 44 plus 49, which is 5. And on the left hand side, x times x gives me x squared. What times what gives you 7 squared? 7, right? 7 times 7 gives me 7 squared. And the signs must be plus and plus. So I have x plus 7 squared is equal to 5. And that's it. I'm almost done, right? So now if I were to solve this, I can just take the square root. I can take the square root here, square root my left, square root my right. The square root and the square will cancel out. And I will have only x plus 7 on the left. But since we are the one who introduces the square root, I must have a positive root 5 and a negative root 5. Remember that. We are the one who introduced this, right? The square root here. We are the one, we introduced the square root to cancel out the squared. So keep in mind that you should get positive and negative. So x plus 7 is equal to root 5. And over here, this is x plus 7 is equal to negative root 5. Typically, the better way to write this would be plus minus root 5. And then we just solve this. X becomes negative 7 plus root 5. Over here, x is equal to negative 7 minus root 5. Or you can say, if you want to combine them, you'll say x is equal to negative 7 plus minus root 5. Okay? This is by completing the square. A very important skill. I recommend you guys to rerun this example before the next example. Okay? So please do rewind and watch this example again. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys another example. Okay, so let's do something that's a little bit more challenging. Maybe something like x squared minus 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. Something like that. Right, so and then we'll try to do this by using the completing the square method. So I'll keep my square there. I'll keep the x there, and I'm going to move the 1 over. So I will have negative 1. Okay. Now remember that we are going to add a number there, and I'm going to do the same thing in order to keep it balanced, my left and right. I'm going to add the exact number on the right. Right. But do you remember what number that is? Think about the number. The number is basically this number here, right? Remember, don't worry about the sign. Take that number, take that coefficient, divide that by 2, and the whole thing squared. And that's what we're going to put in here, right? So I'm going to have 3 over 2, and the whole thing squared. 3 over 2, the whole thing squared. Okay? Now, the last step would be, so negative 1 plus 3 over 2 squared gives us 9 over 4. And on the left hand side, this will be x times x gives us x squared. And 3 over 2 times 3 over 2 will give me 3 over 2 squared. Now, this is a negative, right? So just put negative for both of them. Okay. if you look at the previous example, this is a positive, so this sign here, positive, this is also positive, right? This example, this is negative, so this is negative, that is also negative. Okay, so now I can write this x minus 3 over 2, x minus 3 over 2 as x minus 3 over 2 squared is equal to, this will be negative, this will be 5 over 4. And then I'm just going to use the square root to help me cancel out the squared. So square root, and I will have x minus 3 over 2 is equal to plus minus root 5 over 4. So my x is equal to, which is equal to plus minus root 5 over 2, right? Moving this negative 3 over 2 to the other side, I will get 3 over 2 plus minus root 5 over 2. And you can leave your answer like that. Okay? I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.